Meeting of, what is the date? My goodness, April 14th, and it was spring earlier, and now it's a little bit back into winter, but I expect spring will come back again tomorrow. So we did not have an in-camera meeting this evening. I'll invite our faith blessing this evening is from Major Donna Kennedy from the Owen Sound Salvation Army, and welcome this evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to share words of blessing with each of you at the commencement of this council meeting. Longtime residents of Owen Sound have indicated that you have to go back 25 years to find a winter that matched the outgoing one in its duration and intensity. Am I supposed to press this?
There you go.
Okay. All right, where was I? Leaving many to wonder if winter was ever going to end. All of which seems to magically cloak the disappearing snow with optimism and increases to new heights my appreciation for spring. And when I put this together, it was 18 degrees. It's only 4 now. But I can't remember a spring when I found more pleasure in seeing the robins return or in watching the rabbits in my backyard until they started eating my tulips. But while the community embraces spring, you as a council are in the winter phase of your current term. The end of your season of service is still 6 months away. Perhaps the sense of newness and excitement that marked the early days has long since faded with a sense of tiredness that you are feeling, that some issues and challenges are never going to end. On behalf of the Salvation Army and the citizens of Owen Sound, I want to encourage you and thank you for your faithful service as you invest your time, your talents, and your energy on our behalf. May God in His grace and His love bless you this evening. Father God, as council and staff attend to the business of tonight, may you bring to each of them a fresh sense of optimism, of newness and excitement. Free them from the restraints of winter thinking and allow them to embrace the gift of your eternal springtime. In all things, may they hear with empathy, see with clarity, speak with kindness, lead with wisdom, and serve in love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Major Kennedy. And I will ask council and those present if we could please have a moment of silence in honor of the passing of the former federal finance minister, the Honorable Jim Flaherty. Thank you. Are there any additional items for tonight's agenda? Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a matter pertaining to transit.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, and I would like to discuss Environmental Initiatives Committee in relation to climate change, and a second one on the comment on the visitor's guide.
Any other members of council? Staff? Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 12A2 on the consent agenda. Today, council was sent additional information with respect to a consented minor variance that relates to that same file.
Ms. Corsi?
At a convenient time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jack Tupling to council.
This would be the most convenient time.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jack Tupling. Jack is with us now as our interim director of operations. He comes from retirement with the town of Orangeville, where he was there as their director for over 28 years. So he comes with a lot of experience. He's already up to speed. One of his priority projects will be transit while he's here. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Ruth, and Your Worship and members of council. I just want to say thank you to the city for giving me the opportunity to come and work with your staff and help out with some of these important projects that you've got going.
Thank you very much and welcome aboard. It'll never be dull, and we will have a lot of fun too. Thank you. I have 5 items for other business. Two items with regards to community accolades. One with regards to a meeting on Saturday morning passed, and one just some direction required from council from the Prime Minister's office on the National Day of Honor. And a fifth one is an announcement from the Premier and the AMO media release on the $29 billion for transit and transportation infrastructure. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Whyte, that the minutes of the regular meeting held on March 31st, 2014, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. A resolution moving council into committee of the whole, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Whyte. City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now in committee of the whole, we do not have any public meetings this evening. We do not have any deputations scheduled. Public question period. Is there any member of the public here this evening that would like to ask a question of this council? Okay. Correspondence. We have a number of pieces of correspondence which is requiring the direction of council. Starting with 11A, this is correspondence from Teresa Glover. This is with regards to the 100 Poppies initiative. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. It sounds like an interesting idea, and I'm just wondering, the Canadian Spirit Festival through the Art Gallery is, we just heard at the Planning Committee last week, I believe it was, they're doing a number of community gardens, and I'm wondering if this might be something they might consider for a community garden. Sounds like an interesting idea, and at the very least, I think we should ask them and see if that would fit their mandate, whether it's the Art Gallery Director or the coordinator of the Canadian Spirit Festival, one or the other. So if there's,
Motion to
send this to the Canadian Spirit Coordinator,
Okay.
Art Gallery Director, maybe the Art Gallery Director.
Sure.
She can go from there.
Okay. We have a motion. Councillor Body.
I'm just wondering, Councillor McManaman, if that doesn't work, do you want it to go to Parks and Rec as well, in case there's the parks want to plant? Just wondering.
How about, there's still time to bring this back before then, so how about that? If they could try and get an answer in a timely manner, if it's not going to work, then we can deal with it then.
Okay. To the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. 11B, correspondence from the Director of Legislative Services Clerk, Municipality of Meaford. This is with regards to greater cooperation, integration of library services in Grey County. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm glad to see this initiative coming from Meaford. I would move that council support this initiative and encourage our county council reps to support this at the county level in the strongest possible way. I think that, cooperation in library services, I don't know the numbers, but I believe Grey County is one of the few counties around that doesn't have a county library system of some sort. I think it would go a long way towards resolving a number of issues with some of our neighbors. I think it's an important initiative and one that deserves more attention than it has received. I know almost 2 years ago now, Kevin Eccles from West Grey, the mayor of West Grey, brought this forward. It's been kicking around at county council but has received very little attention, and I think really this is one of the kinds of initiatives that really belong at the county level in order to make sure that everybody across the county has the same or good access to library resources. So I certainly support and endorse this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wright and then Councillor Lemon.
Thank you very much. Well, The sad fact is that the city, or that the county council voted on this issue about a month ago, and it was turned, the county library system was turned down. And there were reasons for it to be turned down. It had been studied for a period of about 4 months. Our own librarian was on that committee that studied that whole system, and it was the librarians that came back to the county and said, a county library system just won't work because we've all got different systems. And in order for a county system to work, we would have to spend, indeed, a sum of money to get everybody on the same wavelength. So we had quite a discussion at the time, and it did hit the media that the county turned down a county library system. And what we did then was to put a motion on the floor to ask the library boards to come up with some innovative ideas that they could use to share library services. And one of the things was suggested that we have a guest pass, and that people that, for instance, if you're in the hospital in Owen Sound and somebody comes to visit you for a lengthy period of time, or if a wife or husband is in and the family is up, that they could get a guest pass at our library and use our library services. Haven't heard anything about that, but we did hear that what we have heard was that our own city library is raising the fees to out-of-town people. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of cooperation between libraries, and there is absolutely no interest in the library boards, including the town of Blue Mountains and Owen Sound Library and Hanover Library, of having a county library system. The only municipality that was really interested was West Grey. And even Meaford, where I was really surprised to see this come through my minutes, even Meaford at the time was not supportive of a county library system. And I believe my partner, the mayor, will confirm everything I have just said, that there was no support up at the county for a county library system at this time. So I don't suggest that we support this motion.
Councillor Lemon.
Well, Your Worship, Bruce County has had a library system. I think it's got to be at least 30 or 40 years ago they started it. And yes, various libraries are using various systems, but there could be immense savings, better service for the communities from a county library system. Initially, I wasn't very much in favor of county libraries till I got more information in different areas on their successes. And I think we're now up to 2 municipalities who obviously will support looking at it. It makes sense for issues such as libraries not to have municipal boundaries, as it does in many other cases. And we've got to start thinking outside the box. Obviously, Meaford has rethought their position. And I think, so that's now Meaford and West Grey, and I'm sure Owen Sound will reconsider if there's a proposal on the table, but I think the county has to take leadership on this and suggesting some methodology for achieving this. I think, to me, libraries are a vital service, a core service of our community. And to have some people without or with limited access to library services is disadvantageous in the long term. It's particularly the young people, families, and certainly to a lot of seniors who do a lot more reading perhaps than some other groups. And I will support this.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. It does seem strange that the county turned this down, 4 weeks ago, and Meaford is now back trying it again. It does seem a little odd to me. However, the motion that was passed said, pursuing options for greater integration of library services, such as a county-wide library service. I'm not sure that that's the only option that Meaford is looking at exploring. I do know that at the senior staff level that the libraries do cooperate a great deal and work together, but I'm just wondering if this shouldn't be referred to the Union Library Board and see if outside of the county service that there's some other option for greater integration that we can maybe work on at a local level instead of waiting for the county to revisit this issue.
Councillor Boddy?
Listening to my friend's discussion around it, I think we should maybe try both. I think it's important if Meaford is asking and saying that they're interested, I think it's only makes sense that we say yes, even though the county maybe has turned it down once already, but the fact that we're saying yes, that our doors are open and that we're interested, I think is a good message to send. And it also does make sense that it goes to our library board, given that it's a union library. It's not the Owen Sound Library. It's not us that makes all the decisions there. We've got 2.5 kind of partners, if you want to include Meaford, there that would help, and there are 2 more municipalities that I think it makes sense that we do both, that we do ask the county to get involved, and that we do send it to the Union Library.
Excuse me, did you move the motion originally?
I did, and I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Councillor Wright?
I just want to say that I think that the whole fact is we will never have a county library unless with everybody involved. But we could have a partial county library with a few people involved. This would not be supported, well, I shouldn't say it would not be supported. It could certainly be supported by the county, but it's the funding. You couldn't use the funding from the county because all 9 municipalities contribute to the funding of it. But there's nothing to stop, and it seems to me that if you take another look, maybe what Meaford's trying to do is what the motion at the county said, was for library boards to get together and decide how is it we could work closer together. And perhaps that's what Meaford is saying to us. Maybe Meaford would like to join the North Grey Union Library and expand that way. And so there's nothing preventing that from happening. I certainly don't object to going back to the county. I'm just telling you that it's the same old thing. You need 2/3 to bring it back to the table, and you'll not get it because not all of the 9 municipalities are interested in it. But certainly there's nothing wrong with trying.
Councillor Twaddle?
If I may, just to wrap it up, Your Worship, I appreciate all the discussion. Sometimes you have to plant seeds. With the county, it seems you have to plant them several times before they fall on fertile ground. There are many areas where counties surrounding us provide leadership in a number of issues, waste management being one that we've tried to encourage the council to take some leadership on. This is one where whatever a system would end up looking like, where leadership from the county would be of benefit. And I'm a little disappointed to hear the pessimism. I think we have to remain optimistic and we have to keep pushing things. If every issue that ever came before this council, we were told, no, you can't do it, and so we never continued to push an idea, then nothing would ever happen. I think this is an issue that's important for all the residents of Grey County. It's an area where the county could easily provide leadership and help bring everybody together. And again, I'll just encourage our representatives on county council to continue to carry that message.
Further discussion to the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. I might suggest to the clerk if we could get a copy of the report that was prepared. I believe it was prepared by, but it was presented by, nonetheless, the CAO of Grey County, Lance Thurston. And it was ultimately the findings of the committee and the recommendations around a county-wide library system. So that would answer one component of this and provide council with some more information. That would be, I think, helpful.
Just a question, Your Worship, was that vote unanimous or in division?
There was, it was not unanimous. Councillor
I did not
Wright
support it.
didn't support the motion.
I'm sorry that we didn't have that report before today, so that you would have had an opportunity to read that report. That report was put together by the librarians, not by the county. It was the librarians that put the report together and brought it to the county, and I think it would have been very valuable had we had that report along with this, and I'm sorry that I didn't see that that was done.
I think at every opportunity, there is certainly, the City of Owen Sound should be looking at every opportunity to expand and collaborate with our neighbors. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, Your Worship, point of clarification. This was just done by the chief librarians. It wasn't done by the boards. And I'm wondering, did that report go to the boards?
I would hope so. Good question. Well, let's make sure that members of council get a copy of that final report, and also that can be for a further agenda item. Correspondence from Douglas Smith, Chief of Staff to the Minister of Transport. This is our kind of buzz-off letter for now. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I'm very, very disappointed. We're part of Canada, and I would suggest that we should send a copy of this to Larry Miller. He's probably already gotten it, with the fact that we are very distressed at the fact the Minister of Transport is unwilling to discuss a question that goes back more than a century. And I think we should let Mr. Miller know, in no uncertain terms, that this is not an acceptable answer. He's a minister who's supposed to represent the people, and to be told, well, I don't have time because I have a busy schedule. We'll make time. And so my motion is that we receive this and send a letter to Larry Miller demonstrating our complete displeasure by the cavalier attitude that's been given to us by the minister.
It's really already been done, but if council would like to, you're more than welcome to pass a motion. Speaking with our MP on the weekend, he's going to be addressing this in the very near future, and I would anticipate we'll have a meeting in short order.
I still think we should.
To the motion, Councillor Twaddle.
I'd like to hear the wording of the motion, and I think it's important that it be worded carefully.
Yes. Because
Mr. Miller has been working diligently on this issue, and so if I may, Councillor Lemon, I would recommend that the motion be, a motion of appreciation of the efforts of Larry Miller, and then expressing our concern that the minister is not available to meet with us, and encouraging him to maintain renewed efforts to clarify what's going on.
That is the intent of my motion. I'm well aware that our MP, Larry Miller, has been pushing on this. This is just to give him additional cannon fodder of the importance of a meeting with the minister. And I think this is like, as you said earlier, we were talking about libraries. I think you got to keep hitting your head against the wall until finally you get a hole in the wall and an opportunity to discuss this issue with the minister.
as I said, it's already been done. Councillor Purdon.
I'm glad it's being done, and I support the motion. When I read this letter, it sounded a lot like the CBC. You know, there's always interviews on the CBC, and the minister or the person's never available. And I would hope that the minister would be able to find time for our community. So I certainly support the motion.
Okay, to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried, and it's already done. So we're really moving ahead on it. Absolutely. Thank you. We have an information package as well as a suggested motion from a group who refer themselves as Stop the Great Lakes Nuclear Dump, a nonprofit organization formed by a group of citizens who are deeply concerned about the national issue, OPG, and their deep geological repository. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I will support this motion. I think we need a deep repository, but building it very, very close to the Great Lakes makes no sense and is not a desirable location. It should be well inland from the Great Lakes. I'm not going to suggest a location, but apparently OPG thought this was a really prime spot because it's, they were able to get consent and agreement from Kincardine. I feel that putting that there may come back to bite us, in the future. I also think that there should be a mine location or something like that where you can put such a repository away from major watershed. Because as is point made by the gentleman in my discussions with him, a number of states are not in favor of this. The water flows out of Georgian Bay into Lake Huron and down past that repository. But I still don't want to see it so close to the water because if it can, it will, and with all due respect, engineering is not an exact science when it comes to deep well repositories. There have been examples of problems.
Thank you. Councillor Adair, then Councillor Twaddle.
Yeah, I can't be to support a motion. I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form on the needs or the verifiability of any of this. I do know that I am somewhat uneasy that the letter comes with 2 pages of internet documents. That always leads me to wonder about the credibility of things when you're pointed to websites and YouTube videos. So I can't support the motion as this is way outside of my competency.
Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Adair. I think it's important that we make science-based decisions. I certainly respect the strong feelings of this group, but I don't think that any of us has seen or had an opportunity to look at the science around this. There are actually 2 separate projects being undertaken. This one, I believe, although you have to read it very carefully to figure out which one it is, this one is for the low-level nuclear waste. It's for things like gloves and rags and tools that have been used in the repair or maintenance work on the reactors to be stored. This is not the waste fuel repository, which is a different project entirely. I've had an opportunity to see this proposal in a little more detail through the Source Water Protection Committee. On source water protection, our mandate is to make science-based decisions. Source water protection has not had any involvement in looking at this. But I did have we had a presentation on this particular repository and also a hydrogeologist who worked for Source Water Protection, very respected independent individual, talked about in some detail about the science around what they're doing and the rock layer that this would be going into. And that wasn't enough to convince me either way, but I don't think that we should be making decisions without having all of the information that could be available, and certainly this is not all of the information that's available, and it's definitely not the science that has been done on this project, so I don't support the motion. I would prefer simply to note and file this document.
Councillor Wright.
I too, I agree. I went through this and I thought, I'm not smart enough to understand all of these things, and I can't support something that I don't understand. And there's been a lot in the media lately about this, and as Councillor Twaddle has just pointed out, that there's the two different deposits. And talking down at the Board of Health about it, Dr. Lynn has mentioned this in some form about the rock formations over there and the difference between the different rock formations and what is safe and what isn't safe. So I can't support something like this until I have a little bit more concrete information to go on.
Councillor Body.
No, yeah, I read through this. Like everyone else, I've got some concerns, but these are the experts. They know more than I do, and I have trouble believing that they would be loose with the rules or do anything that would be remotely dangerous. My next issue is, so if they don't do it there, where, as Councillor Lemon has said, mines, Northern Ontario, so that means they're putting them onto a boat somewhere to get them to Northern Ontario. They're driving them down roads to get them to those boats. And as I recall from the last council, council has no control over the movement of nuclear things through the city of Owen Sound, so I'd be careful what you wish for without knowing what the alternatives are. So I don't support this motion either.
Councillor Purdon.
I have been following this issue for quite a while, and I'm certainly not a scientist, so I do agree with, if council's going to be making a decision, that we do need more information. This information is just from one group, but it is actually a group with, I think, quite a bit of credibility, and has done a good job of looking at some of the issues and problems. I don't tend to believe that Ontario Power Generation is, quote, the expert. It is one area of expertise, and there's other expertise as well. For example, 2 deep repositories, one in Germany, one in Mexico, were said they would never leak. They're both leaking now, and now they don't know what to do about either of them. And they were also went into the ground with the promise that there'd never be problems. So I think prudence is where we should be looking at. It is drinking water. It is our community. I think right now I wouldn't support the motion because I do feel we need more information, but certainly this council needs to be thinking about stewardship of our environment that's directly out the door. And the biggest concern I have with this is the idea of only looking at one single site. We wouldn't put a garbage dump by just choosing one single site. There would be a site selection process, and today, maybe years ago we would, but today there would be a process for suitable site selection, a bit what they are doing with the other deep repository plan for the high-level radioactive waste. There's several sites that are being looked at. So I won't support the motion, but I do think we need to follow up as a council on this and make some kind of a decision.
Further speakers. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I'd like to wrap up the discussion. I realize you might call this a bit of a pig in the poke, but over the years, my experience with projections by Ontario Hydro have been something less than stellar in their ability to predict what's going on, as demonstrated by the fact that the radioactivity of some of the waste is going to be much higher than they originally said. I have knowledge when Ontario Hydro operated 2 different nuclear plants, one here and one down by Oshawa Ajax Pickering plant, and in both cases, there were all kinds of questions about the, quote, science of Ontario Hydro. I mean, I have a great faith in what the new group at Bruce is doing, and I applaud their community involvement. But to make it clear, this is not an initiative by the Bruce group. It is an initiative by OPG, the same people who you pay every month because of their economic mismanagement of hydro in this province.
All right. Further discussion? To the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Everybody else, that motion's defeated. Thank you. Councillor Twaddle?
Yes, a motion to note and file.
Thank you. Motion to note and file. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have correspondence from the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre. This is a request for, this is a request for public funding. Councillor Lemon?
Your Worship, when we did our budget, we had an allocation of around $31,000 for the museum that was located on that site for this year. And the new group has taken over. They're working ahead. They've already had a cleaning bee down there. And I believe that the amount we had agreed to grant them on a declining basis, which, correct me, is, I believe, $31,000. Is that correct?
Director
Your
Financial.
Worship, it was actually $31,250 in a cash donation.
Okay, and so I would move a motion that that money go to the CWHC, 31,100, 200 and whatever. And because I think that this is these people are to be commended, and our marine and rail heritage is a vital part of this community and reflects who we are as a community. There are many, many families, including my own, who had men and women who worked on the ships. It's interesting that many of the blacks who escaped here actually came from the Michigan area by ship. And so it ties in neatly with what we've already done as a community. That is my motion.
Councillor Lemon, I'm sure, in fairness, that would come before there's any council discussion. Just for my own information, that would come with a report back from the Waterfront Heritage Committee, really giving some transparency as to where the funds would be allocated and how the budgets were going to be used. Is that, it is public money, and I'm just suggesting that I'm sure council would want, and I'm sure you would support, and I'm absolutely sure that the members of the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre would have that information probably readily available as to how these city taxpayer dollars are going to be allocated.
Your Worship, I'm sure they'd be willing to provide the same kind of information we get from the Owen Sound Museums Board. I don't remember
Good.
seeing a report on that.
That's fair. We do have that information, so. Councillor Adair?
Well, actually, I think we would want to see a budget and a business plan and perhaps recent financial statements before turning over $30,000 of the taxpayers' money. And if you apply for a grant, you usually present your most recent. I realize the group only has a few months of financials, that's fine. They obviously have a new business plan that requires this money, and I think it would be prudent of us to see that. And obviously the budget that was presented by this group a couple of months ago is no longer an active budget, so I'd like to see a budget.
And in fairness, I think I'm getting some head nodding from the group that's here in the audience, and nobody expects a blind contribution of taxpayers' money. I think that's only fair, and I don't see any pushback on it.
Your Worship, I will amend my motion in such a way that money be earmarked pending review and acceptance of a financial plan by the CWHC. Go to City Council,
Sure.
but we're the ones who would have to accept it, as we do with all other requests.
And I can't see any, that's only fair. So, other speakers, Councillor Body.
I'm a little confused. What's earmarking mean? This means that we're going to set aside, and we're going to approve that amount of money once we see a budget. What happens if we don't like the budget? I'm confused as to what it means, that's all.
Okay, what it means is that we will not take that money and allocate it to something else. pending receipt and acceptance.
Freeze it.
We freeze it until such time as we've gotten a budget that council agrees with and a plan. This is basically what we've done in the past. And it doesn't commit council, it just holds the funds in that account until such time as council gives the go-ahead for the funds to be released. Still, council has control.
Councillor McMenamin?
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. Several questions that I think we need answers to before we can move forward on this. The letter from Mr. Thomas talks about in-kind support that the city should be providing, and I had thought during the RFP process we did agree to in-kind support. And so maybe a question to Mr. Ritchie, and this might obviously be difficult. You'd have to look at past years. Would you have an idea just roughly what that in-kind support might be? Utilities or that type of thing, I'm assuming?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, yes, I do. Roughly in postage and printing, it was approximately $1,800 a year. The city provided maintenance to the building, snow clearing, et cetera. We basically always looked at those when we were doing any reconciliation based on square footage. I don't have those figures directly in front of me tonight, but I believe it was around $5,000 for the rest of the facilities of that building, cleaning, utilities, et cetera, that we figured being the in-kind donation.
So, somewhere that I think should be factored into the discussion. I don't know where exactly. The second thing is the $31,000, that was for a full year of operation. My understanding is the Community Waterfront Centre isn't going to be open for a full year of operation. So it would seem that if there's an amount there, perhaps it should be on a prorated basis at the very least. But I guess this goes back to speaking to the financial plan or business plan or whatever we're calling it. So certainly, I think, I guess I think we need to see a report back on some of these items. I don't know what a fair amount is, but if you're open for 6 months of the year as opposed to 12 months of the year, I mean, my math's not that great, but that would be at least half the amount. I just think if open half the year, and in past years we've given an amount for a full year, that doesn't seem quite right to me. So anyway, those are my comments, Your Worship. Thank you.
Sure. Councillor Purdon and Councillor Chamberlain.
I think the intent of the motion, if I'm correct, Councillor Lemon, or what I would hope would be the intent, would be to provide financial support that was designated for the Marine Rail Museum, with the anticipation that a marine rail type museum with a different name will now be happening at the waterfront, as always, but with a different provider. A different organization is going to be providing that community service. There's a transition period as well, and that the city would still be supporting that endeavor at the waterfront. I think that's the intent. And I agree, we do need a report, a budget, a business plan, how those funds would be used. But I would also encourage council to consider using the whole year's funds to help to support this group, get this organization going. They have a lot of work to do. I mean, the Rail Museum needs lots of work inside, and I mean, I think that money would be very, very well spent on getting this group going, to get the displays up and everything and the new look and clean it up and all the rest. I'm sure that money's not going to even go very far there. So I would encourage us to be looking at a way of supporting the Community Waterfront Group to get a really great facility up and running this year. That'd be a great investment for the city. So I'm a little confused now, but the motion is to earmark these funds for the group. Is there a better word than earmark? Or should we?
It's just to hold the funds in the budget and not transfer them somewhere else.
Somewhere else, until we have a report back.
Until we have a report which is acceptable by council.
Right.
And one of the things is, because the transfer date was April 7th, I believe. Many of the federal programs and provincial programs for student assistance, et cetera, are long past, and they could not apply for those until they had possession. And so this is going to make this year much more difficult. I really believe that there's a lot of community support for this. And I think that by doing it this way, we will get a report, we'll get a review by our treasurer, and we'll see exactly where we are. But the thing is, these people want to get going, and they want to know that the city is going to become, or will continue to be, an active participant. And I would expect that we would get financial plans from any organization asking for city funds, which we've already given out, I believe, as prudent manager of that resource. And they want to get it open as quickly as possible. I know that from discussions, and they're working ahead on this. And I think that they can provide the financial statements. I'm quite sure they can, because they are a responsible organization. And once we've got those and what they're looking at doing, in general terms, then we can approve whatever level of funding council deems adequate.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I think this is a very passionate, enthusiastic group, and it's a real win-win for our city. And I think of them very much like our Festival of Northern Lights group. They came forward, and then we were able to let them work at arm's length from the city, and we continued to support them. We even put a person on their committee, and we have had great results with that. And I would expect, I know we will have the same great results from this group of people. And I can't see why we can't go forward as fast as possible to give them our support. They've been waiting for a long time now. This thing started way last summer. And here we are, nearly 9 months later, and we haven't really stood up and said, congratulations on a job well done. We're going to keep one of the museums open, and it's not going to cost this community very much in the way of finances. It's going to be supported by the whole group. So that's where I'd like to go forward with it as soon as possible. I don't think we have to wait on very many reports. We've had all kinds of them, but that's my thoughts.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Councillor Lemon, and I don't want to get hooked on the word earmark. I think I understand. I mean, there are lots of, there's $31,000 sitting there in an envelope. I mean, I could think of 6 other things to spend that money on off the top of my hat. $10,000 to restore the facade program that we cut $10,000 out, using the money to fix the roof at the old courthouse. I mean, the demands on city money is endless, and we know that we have a fiscal deficit of at least $2 million. Not that $31,000 is going to make much of a dent in that. So I have no problem in saying we're going to earmark that until we, until we get the reports. Although some of us might be itching to spend it on other things because there is lots of demand. Councillor Lemon, you said that because of the missed grants at the beginning of the year, and I know all about having to try to get your grant applications in, that's part of the reason for the request. So is this a one-time request, like for this year, to sort of get things going?
Well, if council...
Councillor Lemon, was that a question?
That's my, yeah.
Okay, just as long as it goes through the chair, we'll stay together. Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Through your worship, council decided on a plan for museum funding a number of years ago, in which it decreases each year. So next year, both the Owen Sound Museums and the CWHC would make application, and it would be for whatever sum it was this year, less that amount. We've been doing this for a number of years, and this would just continue on. I'm not committing this organization. I'm a little surprised at the reaction because we had a commitment made a number of years ago and endorsed by this council, previous budgets, that this would be a declining amount. One for the marine rail and one for Billy Bishop. And I can't imagine that you would want to cut one off and leave the other.
I would cut both. To be fair.
Councillor Wright and Councillor Body.
Thank you very much. I was glad we got this letter, quite frankly, and because I read in that letter that this group, this CWHC group, knows and understands that the city wants the museums to become self-sustaining, and Councillor Lemon is right that we did put that plan into place a number of years ago, and every year we've decreased the funding by a little bit, and every year the museums work harder to make up that funding. And in the letter we've received from Richard Thomas, he does mention in there that he's looking for providing financial and in-kind support, and the city is pleased to offer in-kind support, as we just heard from the minister. We all want this to work, and I have great faith that this group is going to come forward with a plan, and a sustainable plan, one that's not just going to last for 2 or 3 months, but is going to make that museum a place on the waterfront that's going to remain and be there. So I have no problem in fitting them into the marine and rail slot that we have in our budget for the two museums. And I certainly know that they don't expect us to hand them a check right now. I think that they are perfectly understanding that we have to look after the taxpayers' dollars, and they will come to us with their budget and their plan of how they're going to be sustaining, and then we'll release whatever funds we have available to them. So I support. I think I support the motion. As that's, I have to have a look at it. It's a little convoluted right now.
We'll have it read back in a moment.
Okay.
Councillor McManaman. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Body, then Councillor McManaman. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just confused about our communication on this. Councillor Lemon just raised a point. We've been talking about decreasing those two budgets, and that's been going on for approximately 3 years. I think we started at the start of this term. As a result, I think when Mary Smith was still with the museums, wrote a report that if it keeps going down, that they're going to have to close one of the galleries. We had a report to this council, I think last spring. We were still up in the county building, so that maybe helps us frame the time. From Virginia, Eichhorn, who was then acting for the museum board, that they couldn't afford to keep both buildings open with declining revenue, so they were going to keep one open, and we're going to use the marine rail exhibits and move them around to different places in the community instead of maintaining a building and staff. And I was left with the impression, I've talked to a couple of fellow councillors that do not have the same impression, that they are expecting that they're getting this entire budget to run one museum. So I want to make sure that we haven't already earmarked it or created an expectation that they've set a budget on the full amount, thinking they're getting the full amount. Now we're saying, no, you're not. I know in our budget, we have it broken down into two different things, being Bishop and being Marine Rail, as we went through it and have the last couple of years, but I don't know what the city's staff communication has been with the museum board. Are they expecting more? Are we pulling money out of one museum that they're expecting to give it to another? Do we have to find another place to find this money? I just want to make sure when they're looking at the report that they look at those things and make sure that we're not putting ourselves into a conflict between two groups and pulling something if we've led them to believe that they're getting it.
Point of clarification, Your Worship. The monies in the budget were earmarked, so much for Billy Bishop and so much for the Marine Rail. Am I correct on that? And I would assume that none of that money has been given out from the Marine Rail Fund.
I'm going to go to the Director of Financial Services for some
That's where I'm
clarification
at,
on this.
through you, to him.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, The city had always accounted for them on our records as two separate museum groups, but the museum board amalgamated, I'm thinking approximately 5 or 6 years ago, from two separate boards into one. Since that time, they've amalgamated, and there's now an Owen Sound Museum Board that the check goes to. However, we still account for it on our records as two separate museums, providing grants to two separate museums. I have not been in discussion with either group as to what their expectations may be from the city beyond our budget process.
So just to clarify that, the money that I had asked to be set aside until we get those reports is still there in the city coffers.
Through you, Your Worship, we have made one installment to the Owen Sound Museum Board for a quarter of the total of that amount.
Of the amount that was allocated for Billy Bishop.
To the Owen Sound Museum Board, that's correct. It is still within the amount that if City Council makes a decision in the near future to separate the two amounts to the groups, it is still within the amount that they would not be overfunded, I will say, for what is shown in our records.
I'm a little bit confused here because the budget we approved said in it, so much for Billy Bishop, so much for the Marine Rail. Am I correct?
Through Your Worship, my recollection at budget was that we were funding the Owen Sound Museum Board to operate two museums. We do not run the museums. We provide grants to the museum board to run two museums.
Let me offer some clarification. I believe what I'm hearing is that the Owen Sound Museums Board, running both the Billy Bishop Museum and the Marine Rail Museum, they ran it technically from January till the end of March. Is that the installment from January to the end of March? Is that the installment that we're talking about that the old board received?
Through Your Worship, the old board received 1/4 of the total budget that we had to the Owen Sound Museum Board. It is made up of, for 2014, of $31,250 designated on the city records as a Marine and Rail Museum, and $37,750 designated as to the Billy Bishop Museum. So they received 1/4 of the sum of those two amounts. I could certainly calculate for you exactly what that is.
Okay.
Should
Thank you.
council move ahead with another option, they have not been overfunded for what you may be deciding. I'm sensing that.
Okay. Councillor Lemon, got that fairly clear now? Yeah, okay. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, just further to that, this is what I was getting at before, where there's $31,000. Community Waterfront Centre will be open for 6 months. The Marine Rail Museum was open for several months. There will be expenses with having that building open. So I don't think it's at all unreasonable to say there isn't $31,000 there. They've been open, well, I know they've been open for some days. I'm not sure the exact amount, but certainly weeks there. So that's why we need a report to find out exactly how much has been allocated, spent, what their expenses are, that type of thing. Couple of points. I can't let this pass by without saying, and Councillor Boddy touched on it, the Marine Rail Museum and the Billy Bishop Museum came forward several times over the last few years and commented that our council's unanimous decision to cut museum funding was forcing them into a position of closing one of the museums. They told us that numerous times. So it is, all this discussion around funding, what they said would happen is what happened with that group. And I would comment as far as timing goes. Back in the fall, the discussion was held at this council about extending the RFP process, and I raised the point at the time that that was going to delay opening the center with whatever group. It was going to delay the process, but that was what council wanted, that's what the groups wanted. The group wanted, was to delay the RFP process till the end of December. Well, it's difficult now. Yes, timing is short, but that was the wish of the group at the time. So, and I think the last point I'll make is further to what Councillor Chamberlain said, and she's right, with all this talk of numbers and all this talk of, let's not lose sight of the fact that we have a dedicated group of volunteers that have come forward to help a problem in the community and to try and reinvigorate this waterfront center. You know, and I, as much as anyone, get bogged down in the numbers and lose focus of that, so let's not lose focus of the fact that we do have a dedicated group that's willing to put their volunteer time in to try and get this up and running. So hopefully Mr. Ritchie can come back with a report that can give us some guidance as far as funding moving forward, but anyway, I just wanted to make that last comment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Could I ask the clerk to read the motion as they have it now?
Yes, Your Worship, pending clarification from Councillor Lemon, I have that Council hold the museum budget allocation of $31,250, pending review of a financial plan from the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre respecting those requested funds.
And there is an add-on to that, and that this report be presented to council to make the final decision, because then it stays in council's hand. It's not an administrative decision, nor should it be. In my estimation, it's a council decision. We will get information from the CWHC, we will get information from Mr. Ritchie, and then council can make a good decision. That would be including a staff report from finance as part of the information package that we would receive.
Councillor Dare, then Councillor
Thank you, Worship. Since we're not sure there's 31,000 there, perhaps the motion should say earmark the remainder of that money, so that no more of that money, whatever's in that envelope, gets spent. Instead of, like, I think that's the intent of the motion, but there's not, what I'm hearing is not 31,000 there, but we need to make it clear that the money that's there, that's in that envelope, stays there until we make a decision and doesn't get spent on anything else.
That's correct. That's what this motion does. It's not saying the exact amount council may deem to give the group. It's just saying pending a report from our Director of Finance and from the CWHC on the funding.
Just making sure we don't spend any more of it before.
Well, part of the reason why I brought this forward was it's my understanding that the Owen Sound Museums Board budget would be automatically reduced by the amount that was not going to the marine rail. Otherwise, if all of that went to the Owen Sound Museums Board, we would be making a large increase, almost doubling the amount that goes to one museum. And I will ask for a vote of record on this, please.
Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to clarify the motion. If the clerk could just read the part about, towards the end, about the business plan or budget from the Community Waterfront Centre. Is that to be included in the report that comes from the Finance Department?
Again, pending clarification through you, Your Worship, that we hold the museum budget allocation of $31,250 unless that has changed, pending review of a financial plan from the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre respecting those requested funds, and the report, along with a staff report from finance, be presented to council for their consideration and decision on funding for the CWHC.
In the spirit of transparent and open assignment of public money, is that capturing what council's looking for? Councillor Adair.
Sort of. I think from what
We're getting close.
I'm uncomfortable with $31,000 being stated in the motion if there's an expectation that we're going to turn over $31,000 when in fact some of that money has already been spent. And every time the clerk reads the motion, she's saying $31,000.
It can be changed, as the clerk has said,
I
and
think
Councillor
if it's
Body?
the remainder of the money that was allocated at budget for the Marine Rail Museum be earmarked until we get the reports that we've asked for in the motion. But
I'm going to go to Councillor Body for a little clarification. He seems to be...
Mr. Ritchie can confirm this, but the total of the two is approximately $71,000. Approximately 25%, or just under $20,000, has been paid out. The remaining $51,000 is there, so there's more than enough to cover that $31,000.
If I could, Your Worship, I have just looked it up. Councillor Body's numbers are almost exactly right on, so we are not overfunded, barring any decision to council that I'm not sensing will be made tonight, so.
Councillor Twaddle.
I believe, I don't want to speak for Councillor Adair, but I believe Councillor Adair's point, though, is that 25% of the $31,000, or almost $8,000, may have already been spent keeping that museum open, so that the amount remaining allocated to the Owen Sound Marine Rail Museum is now about $23,000, and give or take some change. So I think the clarification, I support the clarification that Councillor Adair is asking for.
If it would solve this issue, I will amend to say the remainder of funds originally allocated by the direction of council, because that was in our budget. And the line I read said a certain number. So at most, let's just say the remainder of it, and that.
That certainly
Does that
covers it.
solve the issue? And I would ask the question be put.
Yes.
Okay, I'll withdraw that.
Am I going to be challenged if I, okay.
If I may, if we've paid out approximately 20 and there's 51 sitting there, if I understand your motion right, then we're going to hold all that 51, which may limit the museum board's ability to draw off other amounts. So I'm really confused as to whether we're holding it all or what we're holding here.
Going back to Councillor Adair.
But Councillor
Then I'm gonna go
Twaddle's
Councillor
clarification of my remarks are correct. There are, as Councillor Lemon has clearly stated 5 times tonight, there are 2 envelopes. One envelope is for the Billy Bishop, and one envelope was for the Marine Rail. We have spent a quarter of each of those envelopes. And all that Councillor Lemon is talking about, I believe, is the envelope that's marked Marine Rail Museum, of which there's X number of dollars left in, and that money that's in that envelope not be spent on anything else until such time as this council makes a decision about where that money goes. I'm not talking about the other envelope or anything. I'm talking about the money that was earmarked for the Marine Rail. We don't spend that on anything else until we make some decision on whatever's left in that amount.
Now, all this
I
talk
get
of
it. Thank you.
envelopes, I have to say, we don't keep money in envelopes at City Hall, just, just for the public record.
Brian?
So, no. Okay, Councillor Lemon, last comments, and we'll have the clerk read the motion, and then we will vote.
I have no further comments. I think that we have achieved what is necessary, and I would request the motion be put.
Absolutely. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Do you need a recorded vote for that?
At this point, since I noticed it was a unanimous decision by council, after some discussion, no.
Well done. There we go. Congratulations, best of luck to everybody involved, and look forward to a ribbon cutting or something like that. So congratulations. It's very exciting. Okay, we have a report with regards to the 2014 DIA maintenance agreement. Oh, yes, we're into the consent agenda. Thank you. Councillor Adair.
Move the consent agenda, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll draw council's attention to the new way of receiving the planning comments. And I know in particular, Councillor Wright is going to be happy about that.
And others.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you for that. I just want to say that it's very difficult when we get reports the Monday afternoon of a council. I know that this came and there wasn't any work to do on it, but if we could just have this information prior to the Monday of the day of the council meeting, it would help. That's all I want to say, but that's...
Message received, thank you. Councillor McManaman.
Well, just further to that, could we, because I did not get a chance to read this, so could I ask staff to
Absolutely.
explain what the email we received was?
Absolutely, I'll go right
read
to Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Worship. The lateness for it coming to council this way relates to when we received it, so my apologies. And council has a report on your agenda, 12A2, that relates to an official plan amendment in the municipality of Meaford. And there is a short report there that outlines that really this is a official plan amendment relating to lots that had merged inadvertently. The files that were sent to council today are a consent and a variance to recognize, both recreate those lots, as well as the variance to recognize the size, basically implement the official plan amendment. And last January, council had provided no comment, and so the clerk has the resolution on the screen. It just simply adds the consent and the variance numbers to the report being received by council.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, thank you, Worship. Just a quick question about the DIA agreement, and I realize this was it's for Ms. Coulter. The schedule of costs, it talks about 2013 actual. So those are the actual amounts from our budget that it cost. We bill them the real dollars, the real amount. That's my question.
That is correct, through you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Okay. Further discussion. City Manager, please.
Council, if I could just comment that we are in a significant time of transition right now. This report would not even have been done by Ms. Coulter under normal circumstances, so I really appreciate the fact that she took it on. And while we're doing our very best to meet timelines right now, we do beg council's indulgence and some slack, because I've got an awful lot of people working extraordinarily long, hard hours right now. And if we don't make timelines, it's not because we're trying to be obstructionist, it's just that we've run out of time, or there's some other agency that has made it more difficult for us to get things to you. So we apologize if we're late on a report. We're doing the best we can. I'm very proud of the effort that all of my staff are putting in right now.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship, and I appreciate the city manager's comments. My comment was just, if we receive it Monday afternoon, I might not have a chance to have read it, that's all. So if something like that happens in the future, it just needs to be presented fully here tonight, just like it was. That was not a criticism, that was just a comment on. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the explanation. I think everyone on council certainly recognizes that we are thin on staff right now. There's just no question. We are very thin on staff, and the staff that are here, many are doing more than one official position. In fact, some are doing up to 3. And this is certainly something that we're struggling with, not only in Owen Sound, but in municipalities across Ontario. The unfortunate thing is, this is where we have to be concerned with. So we do ask all involved to just be a little bit more patient and a bit more understanding in terms of timelines, knowing how thin we are on staff at this time. Thank you. Councillor Dare, you moved the recommendation. Councillor Twaddle.
Well, thank you, Worship. Just when we've dealt with the consent agenda, I just going to have a follow-up motion with regards to the agreement with the DIA.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. For minuting, could we ask that the motion that exists include the addition of the motion that is on the screen?
Yes, the mover is saying yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Twaddle?
Thank you, Your Worship. The partnership with the DIA on this agreement, I think, is really positive for the city and the downtown. And I would just like to refer this to the Operations Advisory Committee for review to see whether there's an opportunity to expand this to include some issues around winter maintenance. May not work out, but I think that there's some areas that might be explored that would be to everyone's mutual advantage. So my motion would just be to refer this for a review to see if there's anything else that could be done.
Sure. Any questions to the motion? Or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have minutes of boards and committees for approval, starting with 12C1. Oh, I'm sorry, I've really gotten very ahead of myself, haven't I? Yes. Let's go back to 12B1. And this is a report from, a municipal election, 2014. Madam Clerk. Councillor Dare.
I move the recommendation that we go forward with having an election this fall.
Indeed.
I move the motion that we direct the staff to bring forward a bylaw to set advanced polling dates in accordance with the report and review the information on school board trustee distribution.
Okay. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you. I just have a question. Media release went out about the list of electors. I'm going back, well over a year, maybe a year and a half now, to the first report on planning towards the municipal election and concerns about the list of electors. And now you can go online and see if you're there. At the time, we were told that the list of electors that's provided by MPAC, not managed or created by the city, would be run against vital statistics. And I wonder if we know whether that has been done, and if not, when it would be done. Because, and I guess that question is to the clerk. Just because I know that not everybody who should have been removed running the list against vital statistics has been.
I'm going to go to the clerk.
Through you, Your Worship, I know that MPAC has been looking at doing a number of things to try to improve the list. Vital statistics was one of the things that was mentioned, but I cannot confirm at this time if that has been done. I do know that in our municipality, all of our death permits that are provided by the municipality are run through our own system, so that when we receive and are responsible for that list from MPAC, none of the information that we have calculated through that process is lost from the list, meaning that anybody that has received a death permit through us is removed from the list.
Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you more about that later because that hasn't necessarily happened.
Councillor Body.
I was just going to ask this, could we get a synopsis of the report, maybe presented by Ms. Van Alphen? This is pretty important stuff, and given other levels of government seem to be ignoring democracy these days, bite my tongue, maybe we could present this while there's people out in TV land watching that might want to hear it.
Absolutely.
Through you, Your Worship, the report discusses two items. The first one is advance votes, and this year we have suggested that instead of having 2 advance voting days, that we increase to 3 advance vote dates in order to allow more accessibility for the voter. We've also moved the location of our advance votes to the Heritage Place Mall to make it easier for people, partly because City Hall has challenges in terms of accessibility, and also because we want to have voting happen in a place where people may be able to multitask, as it were, and to increase the exposure of the advance vote to hopefully get people engaged either on a later advance vote date or on the voting day itself. So we have 3 dates set aside: Saturday, October the 18th from noon until 6, Monday, October the 20th from noon until 8, and Wednesday, October 22nd from noon until 8. And those are the week before voting day, which is on October 27th. The other item is respecting school board trustee distributions. We receive lists from each of our school boards every year in terms of how many trustees they have provided for our municipality, and there is an opportunity for appeal. However, we have taken a look at the trustee distributions, and the distributions have not changed from 2006 and 2010. So we wanted to make sure council was aware of that.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon? You okay? All right. Any discussion? Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question for the clerk. If people can't make any of those 3 dates or they're away on the voting date, what other option would they have?
They certainly have the option to vote by proxy. So they would have the option to come into the clerk's office in the fall and fill out a proxy voting certificate. That would be given to the person that would be voting on their behalf. And there is information on our website about all of that, and they're welcome to call the clerk's office if they have any questions that they'd like to have answered.
Thank you. Just remember the last election we heard, or I heard that, somebody was away for that week and a half and they missed all the advance polling dates and the voting day itself. So that's important to note. There are other options.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Thank you for that review. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a report, CL 14022, from the City Clerk, and this is a public appointment to the Downtown Improvement Area Board of Management. 2 new members to the board. Councillor Purdon.
I move acceptance of the report and the 2 new DIA board members.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Human Resources Supervisor with regards to the fire chief's salary. What is council's direction on this item? Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I will not move the recommendation because I will vote against it. I believe the upper range is too high. Wages in this community, a lot of people in this community have limited income, and that is a fairly large increase in the range. I think it's too high, as I said before.
Any other speakers to the non-motion that we have at this time? Councillor Chamberlain.
Well, I just wanted to comment that I have great respect for our firemen with their being our first responders, but this is very difficult in our community, and it is one of the areas that I have difficulty with that range of salary for the fire chief, so I will not be able to vote for it either.
Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Worship. Maybe we could have a presentation from, I seem to be the singing the same song here tonight. This is a fairly important one that I think we need to have a good discussion, so I'm wondering if Mr. Ritchie or whoever wrote the report can present it.
Ms. Humphreys, did you come prepared to present this report? Go to the city manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. As the report indicates, we are looking to attract a fire chief for the longer term for this municipality. We did look at comparators throughout the province. And we believe that while we hope not to have to go to the top end of this range, but we will have to pay more than we currently are in order to have any hope of success in hiring a qualified fire chief. As the report indicates, we are going to have captains making more than what our fire chief currently makes, and our deputy chief for that matter. That doesn't leave any incentive for someone to either apply for this position or just stay here at that salary range. So we did do considerable research on this. We did present that to council, and certainly if council has another wish, we can go back to our headhunter with that, but I can tell you that this is the range that we have given them to look at. Clearly, we will do our best to not get to the very top end of this range, but it would seem to me that you want to get the best person for the position first, versus already tying one hand behind your back.
Thank you. There is a recommendation on the first page of the report, and we're looking for council direction on this item. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move the recommendation, and I think it's fair to note that there's reasonable concern about the range that's being put forward here, but I think we have to acknowledge that the range is being pushed by the arbitration system. The report makes it pretty clear. This is not something that we want to do, but I appreciate the manager's comments. We do need to be in a position to attract qualified, interested, dedicated people who will do the job.
Councillor Lemon.
Well, there has been a huge wage creep in this area. And as far as I'm concerned, it's got to stop. I know all about the arbitration system and how it's a complete and utter farce. And that goes back many years. But I do believe the $128,102 is going to have other impacts within the municipality, including pressures to increase other salaries as a result of this. And I feel that is too high. We can't afford it. And we're going to have to find somebody there may be somebody out there who'd like to come up here. We don't know. And I think that's too high, and I'll vote against it. I'd vote for a lower number, but that's way too high.
Councillor Body.
Well, I agree with my friend, Mr. Lemon, Councillor Lemon. We don't want to pay this amount, but to get somebody to leave a shift where they work several hours, little responsibility, that are making $100,000 plus, to move up to becoming a chief or a deputy chief to earn less than what the people are they're supposed to be directing becomes more and more difficult. And it's not just Owen Sound. I'm looking at Midland, $108,000. Orillia, $124,000 top end. Wasaga Beach, $121,000 top end. Orangeville, $126,000 top end. Collingwood. Now, often in arbitration, you have to remember, arbitration is, as Councillor Twaddle likes to say, is not negotiation, it's a replication. Collingwood were often compared to, their fire captain's getting $1,000 more than ours at $110. Their upper end for their chief's $133,000, well, really $134,000, ranging from $110. Unfortunately, we're not hiring local. We're not competing in the Owen Sound labor market, which housing is cheaper, et cetera, than Toronto or other big cities. We're unfortunately having to compete with those big cities to try and attract somebody and attract somebody good. We can't afford to get somebody that is mediocre or less. It's too important a department, and we're stuck in competing against these other cities and others like it that are much higher. So I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think we've got much of a choice.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Body said it. We have no choice in this matter. I agree with what's been said around the table, but if we want a fire chief that's going to do the job that we expect him to do down there, and we want and need him to do, or him or her, I should say, then we're going to have to go out with this in this salary range. I guess my disappointment with this report was to see the other members of our staff included in there. I didn't need that information because I think fire chief is a separate position to the two that are named in that report. I think we need to support this, and we need to go out and get the best person we can get to do the job.
To the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Water Division, water and wastewater rates, 2014, 2015. These are challenging times. Councillor Purdon.
I will move the recommendation, but perhaps it would be nice to hear a bit of a report on that as well, just the rationale. I remember coming on to council when this was started, and it was very helpful.
Absolutely. I'll go to Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you. Through your worship, the rates presented tonight are supported by our water and wastewater utility studies that were completed in 2011, recommending based on the costs that are coming in the foreseeable future that we needed to increase rates by between 10 and 11% up until 2015, and thereafter probably in the neighborhood of 6% through 2020. We've raised the rates tonight overall to hopefully see an increase in revenues of 10%. As we've increased the rates over the last number of years, we have seen usage drop, and there's a number of reasons why that may be, and I've highlighted in the report. It could be obviously in reaction to the increased cost. It could be sensitivity to people not wanting to use natural resources. It also could be the slower economy that certainly the province has experienced in the last 3 to 4 years, and our wetter and cooler summers. So probably some combination of all of those have seen usage drop. However, based on our usage in the last year, the rates reflected tonight should get us an extra 11%. We've basically accounted for 1% decrease continuing in consumption. So that's the rationale based on the 2011 study.
Councillor Adair.
I know that one of the things that people say, well, you know, we're using less water, and it's the cost of water. It's not the cost of cleaning and purifying the water. It's the distributing of the water that is the cost. It's all the pipes in the ground, all of that. That's the cost. And if you use less water, those pipes still deliver that clean, safe water to your house. So those pipes need to be maintained. We can't have broken pipes. We've removed all the lead pipes. We have to maintain that system of delivering the water. The water is a cost, but the real cost is keeping that infrastructure at a very high level.
Further discussion. Has anyone moved the Councillor Purdon, thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Chamberlain?
Can I just ask when this would come into effect? I didn't see that.
Through your worship, May 1st.
Councillor Lemon.
Your worship, one of the things, and I've spoken to Mr. Ritchie about this before, is the split between the fixed cost and the variable cost. Where are we now in terms of the average water bill? How much is fixed and how much is variable?
Thank you, your worship. Through you, I have that in my report, if I can just put my eyes on it now. Of our revenues, 45% of our current revenues are coming from the service charge, and 55% is coming from the consumption charge. So our actual costs are very much more fixed than that. Councillor Adair is quite right. The incremental cost of another gallon of water produced is really infinitesimal. It's the cost of the plant, the pipes on both our water and wastewater. They are fixed costs.
Yes, no, I realize that, but I just, because I don't want to see, I know we need the money, but there should be some incentive for conservation, and there is, not as much as I'd like, but it's the fixed costs, and those go on. you've got a water plant, whether or not you pump 100,000 gallons more or less. It's still the same water plant. You still have to staff it. You still have to do the same tests. And I do note in here that this increase will also affect all people living outside the meets and bounds of the city who get water, and it will actually, they will pay actually 20% more, is my understanding, because, or is it 10% more of the double water rates?
Properties located outside the city pay double the Owen Sound water rates, so a 10% increase theoretically would be more, but they pay double the Owen Sound resident rates.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a development charges study that we do have to review, and I believe we would have to have this replaced by early in 2015. So it is the time to turn our minds to this. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I would also, I'll move the recommendation, but I would like to get just a short report, and the part I'm interested in is that is we're asking for a shorter report from our on this year. We're not going to do a full study. Yes.
Yeah, to the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wright. We're actually proposing, because of cost savings, to do both the citywide development charge study as well as the area-specific study. That was the original intent of hiring Watson and Associates. It became apparent when we looked at our timing that we were going to have to launch into doing the citywide study right after council was elected. And we asked Watson and Associates what their price would be to do the combination of the two, if you will. And the price that they came in at is half of what it cost us to do the citywide study 5 years ago. So it's very cost effective for us to do that. The intent is that we would do all the background work this year, and then early next year go forward with the public meeting and that complete review at that time. So the public process, if you will, would happen early in 2015. So there's good cost savings for that. Does that explain what we're doing?
That's fine. So the cost in 2014 is less, of course, than what we expected to pay.
Right.
And what about the cost in 2015 then?
We have an upset limit of $9,600.
In for 2015. Okay, thank you. That's fine. I moved that recommendation.
Councillor Lemon.
Was it Watson and Associates who did it last time? I think it was.
Diamond, Mr. Jim
okay.
Diamond. Or, sorry, Meridian, but I think it was Jim Diamond who
did the actuals. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Purdon.
Yes, I want to congratulate staff for piggybacking these projects, and it's going to save the city money, and it's great that you were able to pick that up and move forward with it. So I'm very happy to support the motion.
Great. To the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the purchasing agent, and we're going to look at fixing some roofs, which we are in need of. Council's direction on this one. It's interesting. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I'd move the recommendation that we award the tender for restoring the roof of the Public Works Building to DJ Pete Roofing, the lowest compliant bid received.
Thank you. To the motion, Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, just one question I've got. With, like, we seem to be, over the years, spend an awful lot of money on roofs. And do we have any guarantee with this of the life of this roof, that if this roof should fail, say a year after they do it, have we got any guarantee on the years that we can expect from this?
through your worship, I'm not completely familiar with this particular tender, but yes, we'd have the normal guarantees for normally a year on workmanship, then after that it would get into the warranty period on the roof materials. And certainly DJ Pete, our experience has been that they have certainly provided warranty work when it's been necessary.
Over how many years?
The warranty, I would have to look for you to see exactly what that time period would be.
Let me know what it is, I'm just curious.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Bayshore roof. Councillor Purdon.
I will move that we replace, or we adopt resolution for the Keller Roofing and Sheet Metal. That was the lowest compliant bid for the Bayshore roof.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. What, what part of the roof are we fixing?
I knew it.
I kind of thought that was going to be the answer, but I'm not. Is it the newer part or the older part, or is it the part that we fixed once before?
It's the older part, my apologies. but
Follow the buck.
You left it wide open for me.
I know, and I enjoyed that, and that's fine. It just seems that I know we've been up there, so is it the side where the buckets have been all winter long?
That would give you a hint.
Oh, gosh. It just seems that okay, that's fine. I certainly support the motion.
So are we going to be looking at another, if we're not fixing the part where the buckets are, help me out here.
I think we fixed that part last year, but I'm not sure.
It's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress. Okay, then. Councillor Adair, did you have any? You were just, we're going to be able to move the buckets. That's okay. All right. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We now have the self-propelled stump grinder. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move the recommendation on purchasing of a self-propelled stump grinder on the front mount show blower. I think that's probably snow blower. Those two.
Okay.
Both of them.
14.
Grinding stumps and a new snow blower.
Thank you. It would be difficult to have anyone argue about purchasing snow removal equipment at this point in the year, I'm sure.
I'm going to need it in a few
However,
months.
any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from Director of Community Services, and this is a potential land sale, part lot 6, adjacent to Seasons. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I'll move that this recommendation of this potential sale of lands, Park Lot 6, Range 5 EGR, and it's adjacent to Seasons, and I understand that's for the parking for the hospice.
That's correct. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And we now will have ample parking for the Owen Sound Hospice at Seasons. That's good. We have a report on naming a park for Corporal James Mitchell and a recommendation from staff. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. Could I ask if staff could introduce this report?
Okay. Director of Community Services, please. This is report 14-053.
Thank you, Your Worship. At your meeting on March 31st, Council had
requested that staff bring forward an open report respecting the process for naming the park on 2nd Street A West in honor of Corporal James Mitchell. Council had received three letters about this. Corporal Mitchell served served the Canadian Forces in Afghanistan. The city does have a policy, CS4, respecting the naming of parks and buildings. It's attached to the report. Essentially, the process will be that we'll take a recommendation through Rec and Parks Advisory Committee. The committee is to recommend a name to council. There is to be a 4-week grace period between the submission of the name and the approval by the advisory committee. And then the public is also to be advised during the process of the name change. So in terms of the process that we're recommending, May 8th, we'll have a staff report to Rec and Parks. We'll have a notice ready to go to the public. June 12th, the committee would consider any public comments that had been received through the public process and then make a recommendation to council, which would likely be received at your June 23rd meeting. Then council would have to pass a bylaw to officially name the park. As the report does point out, we don't really have a standard park sign, so it's recommended that we would consult with the Mitchell family on the design of the signage for the park.
Thank you very much. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. I'd be happy to move the recommendation that we move forward with this process through the Parks and Recreation Parks Committee. This issue has been out there in the community for some time about the city formally recognizing Corporal Mitchell's sacrifice, and we certainly invite I think it's important that we follow our own policy, and our policy invites comments from the public over the next 4 weeks on their thoughts of naming this park. I certainly support it, and I hope the community will support it too, but I move the recommendation that we move forward with the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Yes, Your Worship. I think it's really important to stress that although some people may have referred to it as the Beatty Street Park, that was never in our plan or anything to name it that. At this point, it does not have an official name, and this is an opportunity to honor a man who made the ultimate sacrifice. And I think it's most appropriate to honor those that went to Afghanistan, because it was a very, very brutal war. I don't think you're supposed to call it a war, but it was.
Councillor Adair?
There's two things. It was a war. The other thing, and I mentioned this earlier, and it's just a small thing, and it's just me, it is not commonly referred to as the Beatty Street Park. It has no name. The neighborhood kids just call it the Forest, but it's not commonly referred to really as anything. It is truly an unnamed park that doesn't even really have a local name. So
sometimes,
as we move through this process, the common referred to as Beatty Street Park should probably be removed from anything that goes out, because it is not commonly referred to as that.
Okay. Councillor Burton?
Have we named a park in the past after a fallen soldier? Is that usual practice? Because the letters that came forward were asking for some form of memorial, some form of recognition, and have we named a park? Because there's many soldiers have fallen in battle.
Not specifically, although we do have Jervis Bay Park. We have many MacArthur Park, but not a serving soldier. Councillor Lemon, our historian.
Yes, Jervis Bay was named that because that was the first person from Owen Sound on a ship to die in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe his sister is still living. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was named that way at that time. But to me, this is ultimately the same thing. When I think of Jervis Bay, I think of the Owen Sound person who went down as part of a merchant marine, and the valiant effort by Jervis Bay to prevent further disasters.
Further discussion? Okay. Councillor Boddy.
I was in the presence of Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell last summer at an event that honored their son with the Canadian Heroes, which is an organization, volunteer organization, not-for-profit out of Hamilton. And this war and warfare now is much different than First World War or Second World War. And so there are fewer troops that are lost the same way as they would have been in past wars. Canadian Heroes has been highly involved right across this country with naming of bridges, naming of parks, memorials, and there has been, I've stayed in touch with them since last summer, there has been lots of parks named, and in their mind this is very appropriate. We certainly have named parks after individuals in this city, whether they're soldiers or not. We have named them after people before. Canadian Heroes will help us with the protocol around this if we want to get in touch with them. And after being out and meeting Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell last summer, I think this is very important for our community. A lot of people feel very strongly about us doing this in our community.
Very pleased to see this come forward. Councillor McMahon.
Your Worship, just to Councillor Dare's comments, could we, I would ask the recommendation we strike the commonly referred to part, and actually it doesn't actually say, but we should naming an unnamed park on 2nd Street A West. It doesn't give the street.
Okay,
So,
that's
thank you.
noted. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have 2015 Provincial Broomball Championship bid proposal. This is exciting and certainly an opportunity for us to host a very high-profile provincial event. It's Council's direction. Councillor Whyte.
I'll move the motion. I think this is, again, something exciting that's coming to the city. Will bring people in, will provide us with entertainment, and I was very pleased to see at the bottom that there was a consultation with a number of groups, including the Owen Sound Attack, who will accommodate this for us, and it's certainly great. So it's good. And thank you to staff for working out the rates that they're going to be working out for these people.
Thank you. Councillor Boddy.
A few years ago, at the start of this term, we had a report, I think at Economic Development, but it might have been Parks and Rec, or it might have been both, on sports tourism. That was a really good report, and this is exactly what we're talking about, as was the swim meet this past weekend that had 300 participants and was huge for our city with a new pool that they're able to use that they couldn't use in the past. So this falls right into our policy and what we want.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. I wish everyone good luck on that bid. We have a report from the engineering assistant with regards to the Great Canadian Ride. And this is Ivan Provo traveling through Owen Sound to École Saint-Dominique Savio and leaving the city along Highway 6 and 10 as part of a bike relay from British Columbia to Quebec City. I was wondering if Councillor Purden's husband knew this person. Okay. Councillor Boddy.
I'll move the recommendation that you just read.
I try to help encourage discussion sometimes, and I thank you for that motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We'll look forward to that energetic individual. And the next thing on our list, we have an outdoor exhibit. It's the Sisterhood of the Traveling Shoes. This is an awareness exhibit that is coming to our community. Councillor Purden.
Yes, I would move the recommendation that would allow Women's House serving Bruce and Gray to carry out the Sisterhood of the Traveling Shoes. That's on May 13th in the city-owned land. I think just speaking to the motion. This is a very, very moving display. If anyone has had a chance to see it, with pairs of shoes, looking at the numbers of women and children who have died as a result of domestic violence. It's very moving with the stories as well. So I encourage people to have a look at that too on May 13th.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if this can be answered, or if through you to Councillor Purdon, if she has an answer. I was curious as to why they're putting it in the lane of the 200 block on 10th Street, and why not in a more open area where it would be more noticeable. And because I agree that this is something that is a very important issue, and I firmly believe a club that I belong to would be interested in helping out or doing something with this, but it seems to me that we're tucking it away, and I wondered if there was a reason why it wasn't out further.
Councillor Purdon?
I wish I could answer that question because I do agree with you, but I will be meeting with the people who are organizing it tomorrow, so I can ask. Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, good discussion. It could have something to do with sponsorship, CIBC and so on, who knows? Yeah, it's good. It's a very, very moving exhibit for those who've not seen it. Councillor Lemon.
Point of clarification, that we have this report, and was that location the suggestion of the group, or is that a suggestion of the city? I think there, as I said, there's better locations for it.
We go to Ms. Corsi.
I believe it was the request of the group to be in that location.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We have a report, the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes from March 31st. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Bylaw Committee from April the 2nd, and the Finance Committee from March 25.
Okay. Discussion on anything within those minutes. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have one set of in-camera minutes for approval. If discussion is needed on these, council, it would be appropriate to table to our next in-camera for discussion. Having understood that each one of you have read the in-camera minutes and understood the contents. Motion to, Councillor Lemon.
I would motion to approve.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We're at other business. I have a number of items. Councillor Lemon.
Oh, yes, thank you, Your Worship. The item I was wondering is a while ago we hired a consultant on transit, and I was wondering what the status is of that. I haven't heard of any meetings or public consultation at this point.
Ms. Kersey.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Lemon. To answer the second part of your question, I suppose, first, the public consultation is over. This consultant is not doing a broad public consultation. I will be coming to Operations Committee on Thursday. Wednesday, to select a date for a special meeting on transit with operations and inviting the Accessibility Committee as well. And we're hoping to have that the week of the 28th.
I agree the consultant is not being asked to go to the public. That does not preclude this council from whatever comes out of that, of going to the public.
I'm just going by the recommendations of council to date.
Okay. Was there anything else, Councillor Lemon? It was the one thing? Okay. Councillor Chamberlain.
Last weekend, there was quite a bit of information from the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, and they were very encouraging politicians to get involved in trying to work on their climate resilience. And I was thinking about this a lot, and I was remembering that when I first came on council, there was an environmental committee, and it was chair with Chris Hughes. He's quite a good specialist, and it was very interesting. And going back further to that, I remember going to environmental roundtables with Craig Curtis, and I've always been very pleased with how green our own community is, going right back to our composting yard and our recycling and now our solar panels. So I think we've got a lot of things going for us, but I do think there's a swell of information now coming out about climate change, and I wondered if we couldn't maybe go back to having a committee that would look at initiatives around environmental issues. I don't know if that would be attached to operations or just how we would do that. And I don't need to make a motion about that tonight, but it's just something that if we're going to go forward with some of the suggestions from the intergovernmental panel on climate change, we should be kind of moving it up on our agenda to be thinking about those things. In our own community, there are quite a few groups now starting to hold information sessions and do presentations on it, and we can continue to encourage them as well.
Environmental sustainability, of course,
Yes.
is a pillar of our strategic plan as well. Certainly, it would be, right now, it would be a capacity issue, I'm sure,
Yes.
in terms of staff.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
But, the framework for such a committee, it's something that is near and dear to my heart, but Councillor Lemon.
Speaking in support of that issue, if you think of the amount of recycling we have now and the amount of composting we have, or composting, as someone else used to say. Composting. I haven't got the British accent quite right. Years ago, all of that went to the landfill, or to a landfill, whether it be ours, well, it was ours at that time. We've made terrific progress, but there may be more ways we can do this. And such as the utilization of compressor heat where it's not now utilized. There's a whole bunch of things that we can look at over time that will help make us a more green community. And I think we're making a big step with our lights, our lighting, because the amount of power that we will be consuming will be substantially less, and that improves our carbon footprint. But I agree with the councillor, and I think we should all think about this, and perhaps at some point we can get a report and develop something.
Councillor Purdon.
I'd also like to speak in favor of such a committee, and we've spoken several times at this table about the need for a broader look at sustainability and environmental sustainability, our carbon footprint as a city and what we're doing to set targets, even around the issues of transit and what our expectations are looking forward for reducing our carbon footprint. So I'd really like to see a committee. I also sat on the environmental, had another name, Environment and Waste Advisory Committee, and we really didn't do too much when I was on it, and it was disbanded because there wasn't much happening. That doesn't mean we don't need a cross-cutting committee. I don't know what the process is right now. It seems like a really bad time to be putting anything more on staff, so I wouldn't suggest right now, but I would like to think about it, maybe when we're doing our strategic planning, if there's a strategic planning exercise to look at this cross-cutting issues around planning. There's a lot of really important planning work that's being done now of how cities can plan to reduce their carbon footprint as well, so support that.
I'm going to go to the city manager and then back to Councillor Adair.
I think it's excellent for members of council to bring this up now. I can advise that we will be coming back to council and asking for them to confirm committees and really the terms of reference of committees. And if there are new committees that you think are more appropriately constituted, it is our hope, as you know, to be on the ground running regarding a strategic plan exercise in January of 2015. We'll have the consultant hired before that, we hope. so that we're ready to roll on that. So I think those two things combined, it's an excellent opportunity to look at that.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I certainly agree with Councillor Purdon that, right now, today is probably not the best, but as we move forward and get prepared for the next council to certainly look at it. I mean, we're always dealing with these issues like the LED streetlights, retrofitting of buildings, even the issue around trees in the urban forest. There are these things that sort of cross several different departments, and without sort of an overall theme about where we're going with environmental issues. I mean, it may over here not make sense, but in a bigger theme of lowering our footprint, et cetera, our carbon footprint, an initiative might make sense. So I think it would be appropriate to certainly look at many different aspects of what we do through that prism, and I'm quite content to leave it with staff to move this forward as they do with other committees in the strategic plan.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Chamberlain, if you would like to make a motion, or if you would just like to wrap it up, however you would.
Followed up quite well. I did have a second item.
Sure.
And that was just to compliment our tourism staff on their visitor's guide. And quite a few of these have been printed, and they will be available to the public now, but they are also available at our home show on the last weekend of April. And we just noted that Councillor Purdon is in blue on the front cover. We were having a good laugh about that. It's very well done. It's very nice, the pictures in it this year.
There's many colors in the rainbow. Okay, thank you for that. We have, I'm next. There's no one else. So I have a few items. I'll be very brief. I would like to congratulate, actually, Councillor Boddy touched on the Owen Sound Aquatic Club and the Whyte hosting a very successful regional swim meet this past weekend at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Centre. It was a real hubbub of activity, and people were thrilled with the event. Also, congratulations to the Owen Sound North Grey Union Public Library on their very successful 3rd annual club fair. And what a great opportunity for people in the community to get out and see some of the clubs that are available and find out about volunteering. And it was very, very busy at the time that I was there, and a lot of fun. You had to really listen carefully because it was so loud in the room with lots of great conversations. So congratulations for that. On Saturday morning early, we met at Georgian College. Thanks to, I'd like to send a thank you to our MP, Larry Miller. Our MP, Larry Miller, the Honourable Jason Kenney, and a number of sitting MPs from across Canada were in Owen Sound. They were in Owen Sound at our MP's invitation, and we were able to meet to discuss in detail with both marine industry officials and Georgian College executives, as well as federal government, and our MPP was also in attendance. The Marine Emergency Duty Training Program and the potential expansion of that program at the Owen Sound campus. The meeting was arranged by the Marine Commerce of Canada and the Marine Chamber of Commerce of Canada. And if you didn't know it existed, you should check out their website, because they're all about the marine industry, and conveniently our new best friend, I'll tell you. Georgian College gave us a terrific tour. We were there for about 3.5 hours. We had a very comprehensive tour by staff of the marine program and the simulators, and certainly built a very strong case for other levels of government to provide financial support to expand the program here in Owen Sound. So thank you to our MP for that. We also have a letter for council. This is should be on your desks, I believe, a hard copy. It's from the Prime Minister. This is with regards to the National Day of Honor, which is being scheduled for May the 9th. I am aware, and council will recall in our minutes from our last meeting, actually, there was some discussion around an event being held and coordinated by the Legion, and I'm not certain if our own Doug Cleverly is involved in that, but I would suggest that this letter be received and referred to both the city manager and the Legion and Doug Cleverly for any follow-up. Councillor? Sure, yeah, I'd like a motion for that, just to get it in the public record that we've received it. This is an event that is, it's a National Day of Honor. It's to honor the end of the mission in Afghanistan, and there is already plans well underway for this event in Owen Sound, and this is asking for a moment of silence, and how we would do that is something that we would need to talk about at our next council meeting. Councillor Wright.
That's fine, and that goes hand in hand with the letter that we've written to the President of the Legion,
Yes.
et cetera, talking about the National Day of Honor. So
Absolutely.
we are dealing with these two things, and
Same.
right. So anyway, I'll make a motion that we received the Prime Minister's letter, and that we are proceeding with the National Day of Honor. We're just not quite sure what form that's going to take.
Just to remind
Where are
council that we sort of did that when we had the airplane come through.
Mm-hmm. We certainly did it in a big way.
We
Yeah.
did.
Yes. Councillor, or I mean, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Worship. Last meeting, there was a report regarding the National Day of Honor, and it did have the proclamation from the federal government.
Yeah.
Council did resolve that we would have an event on May the 9th, so Mr. Cleverly has, in fact, been working. As you can see, we've ordered the plaque. We are working, and tomorrow evening, we have a meeting set up with the Legion to talk about the logistics of that day. We've also been in touch with the Meaford Training Centre, and they're having their own event, but we'll have more details for council as the time gets closer on that event.
Okay. Motion to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And I was remiss in not recognizing the Billy Bishop Museum and the tremendous fly past that occurred last week. That unbelievable. And members of the Legion, members of the Gray and Simcoe Foresters. It was, yes, it was catapulted from some research that some OSCVI students had embarked on that reflected some OSCVI students that were active in the First World War. Second World War. Thank you. Okay. We have one last piece, and this is an announcement that everyone would have received. I don't know if people had an opportunity to read it because it came at the end of the day from AMO, and this was one of the breaking news items that we often will get from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and this speaks to an ongoing source of stable funding in the form of the existing harmonized sales tax and redirecting 7.5 cents of the existing gas tax. Now, as we know with many of these announcements, the devil is often in the details. So we don't know a lot of the details on this. At first blush, I have to say, it seems like it might be good news. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and we'll have more details on this for our next council meeting, undoubtedly. But if it is what it says it is, it's some good news. Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Just to remind you, there'll be a provincial election coming up, so you never know where that's going to go.
That's right.
That's not good news.
Interesting times, yes.
Could I add one piece of good news?
Absolutely.
The media release that was received, again, later this afternoon, about the Grey Union, North Grey. Not till, it's already released.
I don't think it is. It's tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I bet the media will call you bright and early.
Well,
Councillor Wright is up about 5:30.
actually, I am.
Yes,
I
she
am.
is. But I would advise not to call.
It doesn't matter, you'll all have it, because it's a media release that's gone out, so you will have it.
There is no correspondence. Thank you.
Why would they send a media release?
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. This council meeting is now adjourned. Have a good evening.